where I write down how I feel every day, right? On a scale from -10 to +10, where are you today, Lars? I've done this for almost a year, right? Since none of the days has been over -2. And then somebody called to me, do you think you're ever going to be above 0? Do you think it's possible to be above 0? Or do you think that just looking at the -2, which is the best day you had, you're so far away from +10 where you think everybody else is that you're going to feel miserable always. People don't feel +10.
No.
Their Instagram account feels like 0.10, right?
Sånn som nå, en perfekt morgen med en hverdag er å kunne starte sånn som vi gjør nå, med en sykkeltur. Altså, den starter så tidlig at jeg våkner opp før familien, til og med før hunden liksom orker å le på øyelokket, så er jeg ute av døren. Og så har jeg liksom fått gjort den første tingen. Dopaminen kicker inn, og så fungerer det ganske godt utover formiddagen. Jeg tror en perfekt morgen vil være at man starter med en sykkeltur, altså. Og så er det jo på tider hvor man selvfølgelig liksom etter hvert liksom renner ut i en sånn situasjon hvor du allikevel kjenner på håpløshet og sånne ting. Men det som går gjennom hodet er at nå klarte jeg det i dag også. Det er en accomplishment på en måte.
Welcome back to Seller Talks. In this episode, we're talking with Lars Erik Lund. And he's the executive vice president and responsible for strategy and sustainability at Veidekke.
Yeah.
And welcome, Lars Erik.
Thank you very much.
And so you won the Transparency Award and the Openness Award in 2021. Yeah. And so we just went to a conference where you were speaking. You were one of the head speakers, and I think there was like 150 people, and there were like top leaders, entrepreneurs, environmentalists, and your entrance was very interesting because you were talking about like how you wanted a entrance like Michael Jackson, and it was interesting, and you were talking about like when you spoke, you showed a lot of confidence, and you were talking about you have been depressed for 25 years. And so can you tell me a little bit about who you are and your story?
First of all, thank you for inviting me. And it's great to be here. It's great to be here in Bergen and talking about the things that I really enjoy talking about. Well, and I think the story about my depression is why I was here. My career started from finishing Norwegian School of Business Administration here in Bergen in 1995. It's more than almost 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And already from my start of my professional career, I went from going in a fairly confident environment at school into something I felt uncomfortable with. So what I talked about at the conference is basically the difference between my confidence and my self-esteem. Because people kind of mix those up, and you think that people that have high confidence for performing or doing anything that's difficult also have a very high self-confidence.
Yeah, sure.
And to me, that kind of difference is extremely difficult to handle. So what I did last year was I wrote an article on Facebook. I was afraid no one would read it. It's a long text, so long that I had to post it like an article on LinkedIn. So that was kind of my 50 minutes of fame. Everybody knew who I was. Suddenly I went from being an invisible EVP to being a visible EVP, but with a depression diagnosis. So since then I've been really interested in seeing how work and the way we do work actually affects our mental health, how we can create workspaces that not only supports people with mental health issues, but actually creates good mental health.
Yeah.
So
because most people talk about how they can kind of fix people or help people if they're already suffering.
Exactly.
And you're kind of trying to change that debate to how can we create good mental health at businesses.
Yeah.
And this article came out last year, and you got so much feedback and comments, and I was just wondering, how has that been dealing with all those? You've gotten emails and everything. How's that been to deal with all that feedback?
At first, it kind of increases your self confidence because you get high on the attention, and then in a while you get kind of, it's too much. So you're feeling like the only thing that's important about you is your own kind of diagnosis. So I wanted really fast to turn it away from my own illness and towards kind of fixing the problem. I still talk a lot about how I feel because I think the stigma around mental health issues is based on people not knowing what it is. So I'm fairly open about my kind of my therapists and my psychiatrist and my pill antidepressants. So, and I do that because I think people need to know that this is all right. I mean, there's basically 700,000 people in Norway using antidepressants. So I don't understand really why we need to kind of keep it a secret. So that's one part. It is very, very meaningful to me to hear other people saying that they needed me to say this and that it helped them in their struggles. So that's basically if one guy or girl actually felt that this was needed, I'm happy to oblige.
Yeah. So, because it's kind of like where you're a successful kind of vice president in a big company and you have a good wife and a good family and kids and everything, right? So it's kind of like externally everything looks good.
Sure.
And you were talking also about like how in an article your best friend didn't even know that you struggle with these kind of things. And so what was the reason you chose to share this after so long?
I think I didn't choose to do it. I think I was not pressured to do it, but it felt needed that I did it because I was having difficulties actually hiding it. So my persona at work went from being like a man with a blue suit as an armor and a strict face and very analytical and very rational in everything I did, and I went from there and I felt that my moods coming into work was affecting how I actually communicated with people. So it just felt needed. So, but it didn't feel needed to actually take the kind of the agenda and running with the torch of mental health. It felt needed just to tell other people that this is how I felt. Yeah. So that's I think this openness part is this transparency and vulnerability is important to actually to deal with for many of us.
For sure. Because I've heard a lot of talk about like depression and anxiety, that a lot of people struggle with it, but I rarely hear people in kind of your position share this. It's interesting. You're also talking about how you, when you're at home, you have you take on your armor and you leave your backpack outside the door, and then you go to work. And how is that something you do still, or has that changed when you kind of became more open?
It has changed somewhat. I'm still depressed. I'm still having issues with kind of varying moods, like a mood disorder. I think English is actually a better language talking about this because it's called a mood disorder, right? So I still have difficulties with this at home, and I still have difficulties at work. But what we need to understand is that people do whatever they can at school or university or work to actually mask that they are having issues. So what they're doing is basically putting on an armor or a mask when they're at work or at school. And then you come home, you just drop the mask. So that's when every emotion comes out. That's when you relax, kick back, and actually you're supposed to be. So I've seen this for myself, if that I can keep a fairly high pressure at work, and when I come home, I just let it go, and I take it out on the family. So my family has experienced a guy who's very quickly. I quickly turn from being happy to being very, very irritated. I can go angry in like a second. I can be very almost mean to kids, my own kids, and I'm very shameful for that. So that's what you do. You basically you're yourself at home, and then you put it in your backpack, and you go at work, and you put it outside the door before you go into the office, and you kind of perform. So what I did to actually, and you're very unsure how you actually handle it at work. So you have, to mine, how I felt it is that I was terrified that people were to know that I had a low self-confidence, and that I was afraid that people were going to kind of expose that I weren't good enough for my job. So it was exhausting.
Yeah, it's super interesting. It's like, I think so many can relate. Like they have one version of themselves when they go to school or go to work, and then when they come home, they can just they can let go.
Yeah.
And it's interesting when you were giving that presentation, I think everybody who listened, if you didn't have a presentation about like depression, nobody would know. And because you were kind of oozing confidence and just speaking in a very confident manner. And so that was super interesting to me, because I've never heard anyone make that separate, where being confident is not the same as self-esteem. And so, yeah,
so people can come up to me and say that I don't understand what you're talking about being depressed. You're smiling. Well, depressed people smile. I don't. How can you be depressed? You're making a joke. I mean, I know a lot of funny people who's kind of depressed or having issues with their mental health. So this is not we tend to actually have a stigma or perceive kind of depression or mental health issues as something they've seen on TV, like people with their hoods over their head in black clothes, with their head down, or like the cuckoo's nest with their kind of electroshock treatment and everything, like in stray jackets. It's not like that. We need to keep reminding ourselves that 1 in 3 people during their entire life will suffer some form of mental illness. And there's at least 1 in 10 in Norway who during a year will experience a period of depression. So when you go into the bus, I don't know how many people are in the bus, like 30, 35, there will be 3 people there who are depressed.
Yeah.
You can't see it.
You gave a statistic where you said got the number 1 death rate for guys between 19 and 50 was suicide.
Yeah. In Nordic, yeah.
In Nordic.
Yeah.
And to me, that's just a very terrifying kind of statistic, that's just the number 1 cause.
And remember that's in a country that's rated
number 1.
Like number 1 in happiness.
Something doesn't make sense.
Yeah, exactly. It's flabbergasting that people that in a country that where we're talking about we're happy, we're not. And I think that once you fall off, that's a problem. Once you fall off that happiness wagon, that you think that okay, everybody else is happy, I'm not, then you're outed. And I think that's a big problem. So I've talked about that as well as kind of toxic positivity issues, where there's a lot of people talking to me. Well, and Lars Erik, you're always looking at the kind of the water glass like half empty. You should look at it half full. And my response is it's fairly the same thing. Huh? The glass.
It's difficult, like the way you define depression, right? Because there's a big scale. Like it's like I think you said that it took some time for you to kind of define what you were experiencing. And so because people are sad and they fluctuate, some people are maybe depressed for a little bit. And so because you mentioned like your morning routine has really helped, like biking. Can you tell me a little bit about how that has been important and why kind of that's been a big thing?
Yeah, there's a couple of parts where kind of the Oslo Dawn Patrol crew is important to me, and there's one is that it's activity based. You need to kind of be in activity, and I say this as easy as it should be, like just get out of bed at 4 o'clock in the morning. I know a lot of people who are suffering depression like me that aren't able to get out of bed even. So I know this, but once you're kind of let's talk about the entire kind of spectrum of people. Keeping yourself busy, like in activities, and having kind of raise your heart rate in some form of exercise regularly will help. at least also being outside. To me, also there's a very cool thing about cycling. We cycle two abreast, like in pairs, and being able to talk to someone that you don't know about things that it's hard to be open about without looking at each other, right? That's a very, very good, important and part for me of being able to talk about people I don't know. There's a good tips that a lot of psychologists use to actually talk to your kids or someone you want to talk to that's about a hard thing is just put them in the car because you're not confronting them looking at like we're doing
on
now.
The side. Yeah, it's very like direct.
Yeah. And so that's a part of it. I think also that's a community. The part of actually being connected to someone else, being connected to the group is really, really important. I said that in the speech also. It can't be overstated how important it is to feel that you're connected. And I'm talking about real connection, like the real inclusion, not the you could talk about not being excluded. That's one part. That should be fairly obvious, but being really included, being loved for who you are, not being kind of stigmatized for having some sort of issues. That feeling is really, really important.
Yeah.
So those three parts, activity, it feels like I can talk to people and I feel connected to that's important. And it's a routine. That's another part. So yeah.
Something you've done like for a while, like every day.
It's something I've done for a while, and I love routines because routines make me tick. It's easier.
But you also mentioned like there's still days where there's still that feeling, the same feeling kind of coming back. And is there anything you can do on those days that helps, or is it just a process you have to go through and wait?
I think my periods of depression lasts somewhere around a week to 2 weeks, and I have kind of really deep dips. On those periods, I need to focus on myself. I need to be open with my family and what I'm going through. I need to take exercise seriously. I need to be outside. So there's some tips and pointers I can do something about, and I'm one of the things that I really like is to talk to people without getting feedback of what I should do or not do. A lot of the things that you talk about depression is, what you should do is eat more C vitamin, or you should read the Bible or whatever, and giving me tips that I really don't need. What I need is just to let off some steam and get it off my shoulders. So being having good friends that are able to actually just listen, that's the best.
Yeah, and you're mentioning like how important that community around you and the support because that I think when you mentioned like the process you had to go through to post that the post, you had friends telling you had coworkers, you had your like a team that was kind of supporting you around the decision. So yeah, I totally agree. It's super important. Kind of different topic. Since you're a CEO, I heard a quote you said from a podcast you had. It's when you're the king and you meet the public, it always smells like fresh paint.
Yeah.
And so you kind of see the image you want to see in other people.
Yeah.
Is that something you are still experiencing?
No, but yeah. One correction. I'm not a CEO. I have my boss.
The vice. Yep.
So what? I think it's like being the quote you're talking about is a king's quote. When the king travels the country and talks to other people, it always smells like it's freshly painted. I think we all kind of do that. And the higher up in the system you get, the impression you get from other people is that they want to kind of prepare and make sure that everything looks nice when you come. And that's not, it's not difficult to understand. And I think that the vulnerability part that I talked to earlier is important in that matter. Because authenticity, if I were to kind of travel around different parts of Veidekke today, it would be easier for me to actually get information about things that weren't working because I have been open about things that I'm struggling with. If we as senior management would go out and talk about how perfect we are and everything is working, other people would be reluctant to actually show what's not working with their parts. And I think that's very, very important, and it's a part of the trust, kind of the trust triangle. We talk about logic, we talk about authenticity, and we talk about so being able to actually be authentic about how you're feeling, how you are, makes it easier for you.
Yeah, by leading the example.
Yeah, you're leading by example. It's strange because you talk to a lot of organizations. They're talking about, oh yes, psychological safety is very important, and we want people to talk about it. But you want, as a leader or a senior management, you won't talk about your own mistakes or your own faults. That's strange to me.
Yeah, like they just want other people to come and maybe like share their problems, but not open up.
But you won't get that sharing.
Yeah, you gotta go first.
Yeah.
And so, have you noticed that difference in Veidekke, or like the people view your community like by your transparency that other people easily more open up?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I get emails every day from people in my own organization and from people outside the organization saying that the fact that somebody in your position can be open makes it easier for me to be open. I've talked to people in my organization that's come to me and said, I struggle with this, and they wouldn't if I hadn't been open about my own struggles.
For example, with a person who just starts a job, and how can, for example, a girl or a guy who just finishes a bachelor's degree or master's degree and goes to a job, but we can't find that transparency above down. Is that something you think that is that something that they can do, or does it have to be like on the top down?
No, I think first of all, I think that you should actually spend some more time than actually just accepting the first job you get. And I know that we're having a need for good people in all organizations in Norway and Sweden. So it's going to be a demand for you. That's number one. So spend your time and look for the company you really want to work for. Not only just take the first and best that comes up, and definitely not just take the first and best that comes up that has the highest kind of salary or the highest compensation package. And I think they should remember that if your values and principles and your ethic and your kind of moral system don't fit with the company you're going into, like if you feel like you want to be open, you want to actually be transparent, and you feel like you come to a company that can't be transparent, at least think a couple of times through whether or not you're willing to actually spend 5-6 years in this business without being damaged goods when you come out. If there's one thing I would change from my own career, is that I would start over and say that this is important to me. It's important that I can get the job and get through the work and be confident that I can be who I am, not who you want me to be. But I obviously it's hard. And once you start a job, let's say it's before you. Now we talked about people that are applying to a job. Let's say you got the job, and you're struggling with ADHD, or you're bipolar, and you're feeling that the bipolar issues that you struggle with is affecting your work, your performance. Would you rather be rated for your performance without them knowing that you're actually struggling with something, or would you be rated as something else that you're open about the struggles and this is something? We can't do anything about it. It's not like you've done anything wrong. It's not like you've eaten the wrong vegetables or not taken enough C vitamin, and therefore you are bipolar. This is something that everybody struggles with. It's just that it's invisible to people to see at the front.
It's because you mentioned like you went to NHH, and you're very like strategic. You're very like, and then that was the side that you could go to work with, and on the other side there was like the emotional side that you had to kind of bring home. And how do you tell people that that's okay to bring that emotional side to, because machines, as you talked about, can do that for us.
Yeah.
And I think like the emotional side for most people and even work is just going to become bigger and bigger. Is that by just openness and just talking more about it? And so how do you kind of bring that emotional side to work?
And at least by asking for it. One thing you can do is actually once you have some sort of decision that you're making in a strategic or operational tactical level, and we say this is okay, now we've made the kind of the agreement, this is what we're going to decide, and then open up for, are there any kind of issues that we should talk about? Could this be solved in a different manner? I want to hear everybody's kind of input in that, because you need to kind of, and you need to have those intuition things, and you need to, we think that we're rational people, influenced by feelings. I think a lot of people now talk about we're feeling emotional people, and we're influenced sometime by rational arguments.
Yeah.
So at least 90% is just automatic decision making. The rest is kind of, okay, do some analysis about it. We can probably, a lot of the biases that we are, if it's confirmation bias or there's different sort of biases, we aren't able to see those unless we're connected to the feelings that we have.
Yeah.
So we need people to actually be on their toes feeling things, and then at least say, I feel bad about this. I don't know why I feel bad about this. Let's look at it once again.
Yeah, we believe like we're rational and we're so emotional.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy. And so in terms of like the, especially like you in your speech, you're mentioning like I'm not talking for everyone, but also for myself, that a big fear is not to belong, and kind of feeling alone with your kind of shame of the things you're going through because you don't hear it anywhere else. Is that something you has changed a little bit, or is it still? Yeah.
I mean, shame is thriving in the dark, in silence. So for people to actually have the shame part of things, let's say that you're feeling, or you have a diagnosis that you're afraid to kind of, if you disclose this, you feel like people won't love you as much as you would without it knowing. That is shame. And that is if you actually keep that inside you, it's going to grow. It feeds on darkness. It feeds on silence. Whereas actually sharing the issues that you don't want to share is going to put light on it and remove the shame. So what I talked about is that you can consider, there's 3 arguments in my article where I said that 1, I am depressed. I have a diagnosis for being depressed. Number 2, outside of that, there's a fear of people seeing that I can't do my job because I'm depressed. Okay, so I used to actually go into work at the morning on Sundays to prepare for Monday. All right. So I would work a 6-day week to make sure that I could do the 5-day week, because I was afraid that people would kind of
not because you wanted, but just fear of not being good enough to do the job.
Exactly. So that's number 2. Okay. So the outside of that is the fear that people will say that, well, Lars, you have an Audi e-tron, you're married, you have 3 kids, you have car, everything is all right. So why the hell should you be depressed? You don't have any reason to be that. Once I kind of poked a hole in the depression part, the other 2 layers just kind of vanished, because that was based on shame.
That's big.
So that's I can't stress this enough. I mean, and it helps just to share it with somebody you know, that you're certain that once you tell this to the one kind of colleague, friend, manager, employee, whatever you want to talk to, once you share it, it gets better. I can guarantee it get better.
It has like less power over you when you
exactly.
But I just rarely hear it when just people talk. Like I'm not like used to this kind of openness, like just listening to it. So it's super like refreshing to like hear that authenticity, because I think so many can relate, especially like you see young people going through stuff. And so what would you say to you're mentioning like you would be, I think you would do if you had to do it over, was to just spend or like watch the direction. Would you have any advice for say like the 20-year-old Lars, who was kind of just before this started to happen?
Yeah, I think so. I think I would spend more time in trying to look at the things that I'm good at, not at everything that I need to improve. I think that I would actually choose a job where I felt safe to be who I wanted to be. And that's probably it. I've kind of, to me, both titles, salaries, a car, where I live, what sort of address, everything is jewelry. And and the jewelry is fine. The jewelry kind of boosts the self-esteem. Okay, I got a kind of a silver gray Audi. Wow. And you feel higher, and you feel taller, you feel better than everyone else, and you want to feel better, right? But once you get older, you see that this is just, I mean, it's temporary. It doesn't do anything for you, right? So to me, I would rather choose a job that has a meaning. I would rather choose a job where I felt connected. I felt that there's the proper inclusion, that they wanted to be with me. I would rather do a job where I was clear on what sort of expectation was met for me. And I would do this, I would take this up front.
Yeah.
And whether or not you're going to be 1 month, in my case, I would probably have to go 3 months, 4 months without a job before I could get a job. That would be fine.
Yeah.
Because you're going to live with this job.
Apply to theater school?
Yeah. I did, and I was hard. I mean, that was really hard to get a no on that. Even though I probably should have known that I wouldn't get it, but I didn't. I was super confident that this is something I'm going to make, but I didn't.
And so, is that something you think you would have still pursued, like that direction with the theater school, if you imagine if you applied again, or
but again, the point of actually applying to the school of theaters in Norway is that it's another jewelry. I could have performed theater without going to that school, but I wanted to go to the school because it's status to have gone to that school. But what I really like is the immediate reaction I get when getting up on stage. So I feel easier talking to 200 people in a room than talking to you now, Marcus. Right?
Yeah, because on a stage, you seriously, you look very just comfortable.
Yeah, it just feels natural to me, right? So it feels comfortable. I'm still nervous. I'm still kind of my heart is pounding, and I feel sweat in my hands, and everything is kind of awkward. But I feel I am preparing myself to perform, and my heart is racing, my brain is racing. This is what I want to do, and I feel that getting that kind of immediate feedback on things that you do, not something that I do this and I get a feedback 2-3 weeks later. So and I can do that. I can do that without going to school to do that if I feel like I want to. And I think that you need to not follow your heart, but instead kind of look at what are you good at.
Yeah.
And then. Yeah.
What has been some of the things you've been good at, and what has been kind of the other things that you instead focus on?
Now you're getting seriously open.
Yeah.
No, I'm properly good at performing on stage. I can say it. I feel like I'm properly good at the stage. I feel self-confident about that. I feel really ashamed about being. I'm say it like this. I'm extremely good at also procrastinating. I'm pushing everything to the last, and I'm just the worst procrastinator, right? On everything. I have a tendency to actually have a good idea, start the idea, not being able to finish it. I have the tendency to do things that I really want to do, like the presentation I was giving today. I knew I was going to do it 4 weeks ago. I knew I was going to do it 2 days ago. And I feel I can't start the work because once I start it, I've already kind of started on the journey, and it might go wrong if I don't kind of rationally analyze it first. So it's strange, yeah.
It's very strange with procrastination, because what I did used to do before, I procrastinate. For example, if there was a time limit, and then I waited just before the time limit, and then fear kicks in, and then you just use that fear motivation to kind of to be able to work.
Yeah.
Or else I was like, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't change it. I spent and then I don't know, something changed and you find different reasons for why you do the thing, and that really shifted that procrastination thing. With the presentation again, because like we were talking a little bit about this earlier, where people associate success with
external markers.
Like they don't associate like depression and success. right? That's like very like because we the definition of success is very like external,
Yeah.
right? So we just measure, okay, it's a house, it's this. And so what's your kind of definition on success?
That's a good. That's a very good question. I really thought that kind of the success was the external markers, people, and I remember starting at the Handelshøyskolen or NHH here in Bergen and thinking that when I get home, like to the anniversary at the high school or something, they're gonna see like I have success, right? And I remember the choir that I sang at with a kind of a hat and a big red bow tie, and I thought this is so cool, and this is like established in 1936, and coming home and you know what, guys, I started in this choir, and they're like, what? How is that cool? And then so what is success? I think at the end of the day, I feel very successful once I see that some of the things that I've done or said has meaning to other people, and I feel meaning in that. And I think that the other part is that once I feel connected to other people, I also feel somewhat kind of a life quality with that. I rarely look at the bank statement or my salary or bonus or dividend or anything like that. I can still struggle with the part I feel like I use too much money. I can still feel like I shouldn't. So to me, kind of life success or my own success is based on whether or not I feel like I have real connections in my life and meaning.
It's because it's like, I think like that is a big conversation to have, like start changing the conversation of what is success, and like, is that money and where you work and what job you have. So yeah, that's because I think you're the like only one that I kind of hear about, like talking about how your feeling is maybe the most important and what you're doing. And you're in terms of, if we go back to depression, you describe depression as being a symptom of something else. And so what has that been for that? What has that something else been for you?
Well, I said that kind of it's a symptom because you can treat the symptom by giving kind of different pills or any medication to actually lift yourself. But I think that depression is also a symptom because it's something that you see depression as a result of something else. So it's actually what I talked about in the talk today. Is three very, or at least two of them that are extremely important to me, which is connection and meaning. I think, and I also think that there's another part of it. I mean, depression is a natural, probably a pretty natural, rational reaction to some of life issues. It's something that people have struggled with for like ever. So it's strange to think that it hasn't been kind of biologically programmed into our bodies, like something that's natural. So I'm less scared for depression. I'm not like going through, I'm going to be depressed forever. That's going to be very hard. I'm probably going to be depressed forever. Like have depression, instances, periods of depression, and I'm going to live with it. And I've also been asked, where would you be if you weren't?
Yeah.
And I think they then think that I could be king or president or anything. But I think that the reason why I am where I am is a result of also the depression and kind of the manic kind of hunt for performance.
Yeah, that's part of the probably
that's
motivation.
Part of me, yeah. So part of me and part of the drive that I had is this.
Because I was gonna ask you a little bit later, but you kind of answered it like, do you believe that you're always gonna be depressed?
I believe that I'm always gonna struggle with some sort of mental issue. Yeah.
Because it's, I kind of agree with it like trying to always look for just happiness for most people just doesn't work.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
And Marcus, that's extremely good. Looking for happiness is I think we're getting sadder because we're always looking for something to expect that you never get, right? So I have a diary, where I write down how I feel every day, right? So I write down, blah, blah, blah. I took this pills, blah, blah, blah. Had this conversation. On a scale from -10 to +10, where are you today, Lars? I've done this for almost a year, right? Since none of the days has been over -2. And then somebody called to me, do you think you're ever going to be above 0? Do you think it's possible to be above 0? Or do you think that just looking at the -2, which is the best day you had, you're so far away from +10 where you think everybody else is that you're going to feel miserable always. People don't feel +10. No. Their Instagram account feels
10,
0.10, right?
Yeah.
So I think people are going to kind of vary. They're probably going to vary to +3 and feel confident and feel like things are moving. They have flow in their life. Things are working. They have balance. But then they're going to fall down to -2 or something. And so that's the chase for happiness always. It's just strange, not needed.
Yeah. Because it's like if you always chase it or always like, and like you were mentioning, like with Instagram, if you always look at just everyone else, and that's what we do, we compare and what we see is unrealistic stuff.
If you look at my account, I mean, and literally the pictures I choose is from like 100. So I go for a ride, 150 Ks, and I take like 150 photos. I don't, but some friends of mine, and then they send it to me. It's not like I post every photo. I post the ones that portrays me as successful. I post this, and people are reflecting on that. That's a successful life. You're a +4 guy, I'm not. So what we should do is take the worst images and put those. And this is how I look into my worst instances, right?
Yeah, and like the Facebook post, it's interesting that the only one or the most authentic kind of post you ever did got the best response.
Yeah,
because it's like I think people think, and like you talked about how you're afraid that nobody was going to see it, and I think people just crave for that just authenticity.
Yeah,
because they don't see it. So rare to just hear people like you hear and like see weird photos of people not smiling or people being unhappy or having a bad day. And do you think that is something we can include in social media, like post more authentic stuff, or is that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I really should do this because I haven't, but I should probably do a photo myself when I wake up and just feel awful. But again, social media is. At least we need to know that what people post there are either filtered in a way that it's unrecognizable, or you post only the best things that you have. So just know that's the way we do it. And once, I would probably say, you guys, I would say, see your kind of Instagram posts, and then I see, oh shit, these guys are really successful. Like they're doing like this and this, and then what we clunk into it is like one facet of our lives is clunking into another facet of our lives, and we're not seeing the real me. So I'm comparing the worst part of me, my kind of self-loathing. I'm portraying that. That's what I'm feeling inside. It's not what it's on my Facebook site. And what I'm seeing is Marcus's Instagram accounts, which is just perfect. And I think that's you. Probably not, right? You have bad days as well, right?
For sure. I don't. It's kind of like I understand that people, it's kind of like that. That's the best thing to do is just be totally transparent and just show everything. But it's like with everyone, it's just fear of what happens when you do it. What happens like when people judge you or criticizes you, or it's like getting additional pain on top of the pain you're already feeling. I think that like I see no one, like nobody I know has kind of been that authentic or that transparent like with social media at all. And so because this is also a different like definition question. What's your definition of authenticity? If you kind of, because it's a very tricky kind of, how do you know when you are or not?
to me, I mean, now I've talked about earlier that what I've done to actually make sure that I wasn't disliked and pushed out of groups or not feeling connected. What I did was actually either put on a mask or do something stupid to make sure that I got the kind of the part. So I've told about I lied or I stole or kind of shoplifted or did things like that to make sure that I was tough enough, or I started smoking because that was cool. I didn't do my homework because I think that was cool. Or and then at work, you're starting to do things that you put on a mask because you think that everyone needs to, you know this kids tool kind of toy where you have to put different shaped things into different holes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So what we're trying to do is basically I am a star, and you're trying to put that into the triangle part, and you kind of you cut off the things that are unique about you to make sure that you fit into. I think this is what we're doing always, and I think businesses are experts in actually creating that image that this is what we're looking for. Okay, so this is what I need to fit in. I need to have that kind of. So what it feels, let me answer it this way. What it feels to be authentic is that it feels very comfortable to be just you.
Great way to put it. Yeah, the feeling.
Yeah, because I mean, people can, and this is also one of the reasons I posted my article is that this was something I wanted to hide. I didn't want people to know it, but I was afraid people would recognize it or see it and publicly kind of comment on it. So what I would do is make sure that I control the message. This is my story. This is the way I'm going to kind of portray it. So it's very designed, the scope, right? Yeah. So it's not, I mean, it's as authentic that I dare to be.
It's communication strategy.
Exactly. And then you get kind of more comfortable. Okay, now I've tore down some walls and I start, okay, I can talk about being at the psychologist. I can talk about being kind of being treated with a psychiatrist. I can talk about my SSRI tablets. I can so you can go from where you know it's true, but you haven't shared everything, and then you can expand on that, and it feels very comfortable.
Yeah, especially like you were controlling the narrative.
Yeah,
and it's very comforting to if you know or share everything that's going on, nobody else can kind of add something because you've already told everything.
I've already told everything. Yeah.
So that if that even sounds very scary to do, but it gives you a lot of like trust, because then I don't know if you watched it's a completely different thing, but Eminem, he has a rap battle with a guy, and with the rap battle he tells before it's a competition, right? He tells him all the things that is weird and bad about himself, so that the other person doesn't have anything else to kind of add on, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, that's a good strategy.
I need to see that. I'm a big fan of.
But I just thought of that.
That was good.
So it's I'm trying to kind of bring it back to, especially like the younger audience who doesn't have any like guidance on this and doesn't know if what they are experiencing, and do you have any simple things that they can, except for just going to a psychologist or getting help, that's also really important, but any simple things that you've done that can be really helpful for them? You were mentioning like the journaling thing.
Yeah. There's a lot of things you can do, and I think that if you're struggling with mental health, one of the things that is important that you see professional help. That's kind of number one. If you're really feeling kind of the struggles, you need to do that. Make sure that you get kind of get help. But the other part is things that you can do for yourself. Is once it's probably journaling. You can write about how you feel. I felt it felt good to me to actually write it down, because it came out in black and white, and you can see it, and you can read it, and you can see it again, and then you can not edit it. It's easier to actually have the time to actually write everything down. The other part I think is to actually reach out to somebody you trust. Make sure that you really trust and talk openly about what you're struggling with. And with people you trust, you need what I need from sharing my struggles is that I need people that not kind of turn it into something I'm going to fix you, Lars Erik, but to turn it into, okay, I hear
listen.
you. I can hear and I can relate, and I understand that you're struggling, and I'm feeling honored that you shared it with me. So find people that you think have the time and the kind of the relation with you and trust you enough to make sure that you can talk about it. And to me, it's very important to create routines, habits. So I'm a real big fan of the book called Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
And I love that book because it just the idea that creating good habits is a way, kind of millimeter or inch by inch towards a better goal. It's important to me. It might not be important to other people, but to me it gets a structure in my life. I'm not particularly good at it, but I feel better once I can say that, well, okay, in the morning I will do this. I will cook myself oatmeal. I will eat my oatmeal. I will get the job. I will so I have this kind of
small goals.
Yeah, small goals and routines that help me. So that's something I do. I feel I struggle with picking out the right shirt to have in the morning. So to me, it's just this is the clothes I'm gonna wear.
Yeah. Yeah, the Atomic Habits is real powerful because it just breaks down these small steps when the goal is very big.
Yeah.
It's super powerful. And you were mentioning like the making this decision to make this like publicly. You mentioned in the past that you second guessed if it was the right decision to do. Is that something you're still second guessing, or has that changed?
No, I've come to terms with whether or not I regret it or not. I'm fairly certain that at some point in the future I will probably regret it once more. But I it's done is done. I'm not right now. I'm not regretting it. But I've second guessed whether I was right to do it during the fall. And I think the reasons for that is that I felt everything kind of revolved around my depression. I'm not with being open doesn't mean I want to talk about depression all the time.
Yeah.
So people think that, well, okay, you're depressed, right? Okay, you want to talk about feelings all the time. I don't. So I don't have that need. I have a need to actually do my job, do my work fairly, hopefully good enough. But I stress the fact that I need to be able to come as I am without feeling the need to hide it. So that's transparency to me.
Yeah, totally. Because it's very good. I can see that it, like, a lot of people could like label you and just only talk about the depression thing and kind of and only talk about that when there's so many other things to a person than mental illness. I think we can sum it up there. Really interesting to kind of hear a totally different perspective on just emotions and dealing with it. And I think the more we can do this and more transparency, I think more people can benefit.
Sure. Thank you very much for inviting me. It was great.
Thank you so much. All right. We're going to talk to the audience next week, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.